Hey, I welcome you to this channel. I'm Mr. Review, and this is Save Your Money Reviews. Today we'll be going over Venom. I'll be giving you my honest and unbiased review, being objective instead of subjective, delivering the best reviews right here for you. Today I'll be going over why I decided to boycott the Venom movie and even future movies. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. So the point of this is to inform you guys why I decided to boycott this film and also future sequels to this film. Okay, let's start off with what makes the character of Venom cool and what made me a fan in the first place, okay? So the big thing that, now I'm going to go over a huge portion, of course, of why I decided to boycott, and also, just more in depth and detail as to why. In other words, for it to make sense for you guys. Again, the cool thing about Venom, and I feel like what made, definitely me as a fan of him in the first place, is that one thing about Venom is that he has a connection to Spider-Man. A huge connection, a core key connection. Without Spider-Man, there's no Venom. If you guys recall or are familiar with the source material, pretty much a symbiont is something that comes pretty much, it's an alien, and it needs a host in order to function. So Peter Parker is a suitable host that it found to attach itself to and kind of use as a host. Now, as you guys probably know, once he became one with Spider-Man, Spider-Man gained all these cool enhanced abilities to what he was already known to do. But everything was just enhanced. He was faster, he was stronger, his webs were stronger, and if you guys know and recall, Spider-Man actually uses web cartridges. So he has to refill his web after a certain amount of time. They don't just come out of his body naturally. It's something that he, of course, created, mixed together, and kind of came up with it and started using it. Once the Venom, pretty much, or the symbiont, attached to Peter Parker, at this point he was able to naturally shoot webs. So he didn't need those web cartridges anymore. He can just shoot them literally from his body. And of course those webs were even stronger than his batch of webs that he mixes up. So everything that Venom brought to even Peter Parker / Spider-Man made Spider-Man even a greater hero, a greater character as far as his abilities, as far as his enhancements with being one with the symbiont. Another key thing that won me over as a fan is the cool looking suit, man. Let's be honest. The all black suit with the white spider symbol just was the coolest thing. I just recall being a kid and seeing that. Like, that just made Spider-Man 10 times cooler than what he was. And I already loved Spider-Man. Already loved what Spider-Man was able to do and capable of doing, and just him having a brand new suit and brand new abilities that were just making him 10 times better as a character just made me, in a sense, fall in love with Venom, because of course he's a part of Spider-Man at this point, of course, the beginning of Venom. So you're kind of just seeing how cool Venom is through Spider-Man initially, of course. So just with those abilities alone, just the cool factor, the look, if you add all those things together, he was undeniably, likable. Like, you had to like him in some capacity if you're a Spider-Man fan. So at a certain point, eventually, Spider-Man pretty much rejects the symbiont, and that's due to the fact that now this thing tries to take over your mind, in a sense, and make it tries to put its own personality and feelings within you. which the symbiote is, in a sense, I wouldn't say evil, but it doesn't have a huge moral compass. It's not into not killing. It's not into protecting everybody, and that whole good guy thing. It's just not a good guy. I wouldn't say it's a bad guy, but it's just not looking for the greater advancement of humanity. It's more so about survival. It's more about dominance. So it's a little bit more aggressive than what you typically would be. It adds that aggression to you and kind of fogs your thoughts as far as decision making. If you typically would save someone falling from a building, the symbiote may make you ignore those feelings to save someone. So because it doesn't want to itself, or whatever the case may be, it may not want to put itself in harm's way to save another individual. So it changes the characteristics of a hero, or what you previously was, and kind of turns it into something a little bit more darker, a little bit less caring. And you at one point you might have had a rule not to ever kill anyone, or a bad guy, or whatever the case may be, and the symbiote would change that whole outlook for you, and try to kind of make you do it, in a sense. So Peter Parker / Spider-Man rejected the symbiote due to those issues there. And, just he doesn't want to be controlled, and nor does he want to be any different than what he is, or, be a villain in a sense, or an anti-hero, which that's the route he was going to go if he continued to stay with it. So due to that, he rejected it, got it off his body. I don't have to get into all the details about how and things like that. Long story, because you guys probably most likely know if you're here, you're a fan of Venom. If you're not sure exactly about how the story goes, I advise you to go check it out, get some more details about it. You can always come back to my review or outlook on Venom in this movie. So eventually, after Spider-Man rejected the symbiote, it finds Eddie Brock. Now, Eddie Brock pretty much at this point already hates Peter Parker due to their personal issues with jobs and things like that. Pretty much, long story short, Peter Parker made him look like a fool, exposed him. So he hated pretty much Peter Parker. At that point, he wanted to hurt him, I believe. I think that's fair to say. But, of course, him being, now again, Eddie Brock is a pretty muscular guy, even without the symbiote. So I'm sure if he wanted to kind of find Parker and beat him up, he probably could have. But I think, it's different when you have a super ability versus just regular everyday abilities. And then again, you got to account for the symbiote already making you even more aggressive, adding more darkness to maybe your anger of where it was already before, of course, the attachment of the symbiote. So pretty much it joins with Eddie Brock at that point. He enjoys the abilities that is given him. And if you guys know or not aware, of course, of because of the symbiote being attached to Peter Parker / Spider-Man, it actually gains Spider-Man's abilities. So all of the abilities Spider-Man has or had, the symbiote has taken it into its own, in a sense, DNA, its own structure, its own abilities, and kind of morphed it or warped it into its own thing. So at this point, the symbiote still could spit out webs like Spider-Man could, but again, it's more natural. It's more from his body. It doesn't have to be made. It's unlimited. He can use as much as he wants. Also, of course, he can use the symbiote as a weapon as well. Rather it be, it hitting somebody over or knocking someone over. Now, he can't form like weapons with the actual symbiote or anything like that, but it still can, protrude from his body, knock somebody over, maybe hit him, come back to the body, things like that. So it does have, small minor abilities as well. But it's pretty much, the point of Venom is pretty much it's Spider-Man, but it's a darker version of Spider-Man. The symbiote is pretty much, the anti-Spider-Man. It's the thing that is Spider-Man, but in the worst way. So of course, Eddie Brock gains these abilities. Not only does he gain these abilities, but he pretty much know who Spider-Man is, which is Peter Parker. So he discovers, who Spider-Man is, and it made it even worse because he already doesn't like Peter Parker. Venom slash the symbiote doesn't like Peter Parker or Spider-Man. So at this point, it's a mutual romance. It's a mutual agreement. It's a mutual love because they hate the same thing. So once they get together, at this point, with him having the inside scoop on who Peter Parker is, who Spider-Man is, where to find him, how to find him, how he moves, his schedule, all that. He knows all that because the symbiote obviously spent time with Spider-Man slash Peter Parker. So he got a chance to kind of see lifestyle, who he loved, who he was dating, who he's around, his family, all that. So pretty much at this point, Venom's already 20 steps ahead of Spider-Man in the sense of the intel battle. And then of course at this point, he's going after Spider-Man. But another thing that just made him so cool is that I've seen Spider-Man for since my childhood for a long time, and how he always had challenging foes or enemies or adversaries. Of course, they were always challenging Spider-Man, but somehow just how strong Spider-Man is as a hero and just his abilities alone, you always felt like he's going to find a way to overcome those situations, even if it's get close to a point where it's has you on the edge. You're kind of like, okay, he's going to overcome this. You just feel that way naturally because that's what he goes through all the time. There's always a new challenge or some type of challenge where he has to pretty much try to find a way to stop the bad guy or survive the battle, whatever the case may be, and he usually does. In this particular instance, when he's fighting Venom and when they finally come face to face, Venom is striking fear into him because pretty much knows, again, where Spider-Man is, who he is, and he lets Spider-Man know, slash Peter Parker know, hey, I know all this about you. You know nothing about me. Eventually, of course, Peter Parker slash Spider-Man does discover that he is Eddie Brock, things like that, but that doesn't go without, of course, Eddie Brock slash Venom torturing him, pretty much psychologically torturing him slash physically torturing him even before he discovers that information. And even after, you still have to, of course, stop Venom. You still have to defeat Venom. In this case, like I was referring to, just how even Spider-Man's spider senses didn't go off whenever Venom was a threat to him, whenever he's attacking him. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm assuming you do. Spider-Man has spider senses, so he can always kind of try to dodge attacks and already know what's about to happen in advance, in a sense, rather be a split second in advance. In this case, he doesn't. His spider senses don't go off when Venom is attacking him because the symbiote already had a way to understand what the spider senses are and how they work. So it found a way to kind of disable those senses whenever he was involved as far as attacking Spider-Man. So that already added an extra, like fear factor there, and the fact that he's the first, bad guy, to my knowledge, to do that or be able to even do that. Which, the spider senses is not everything that makes Spider-Man, but it is a key factor as far as how he fights and how he's able to overcome his opponents. Without that there, that's pretty huge. So that was a shock to me when I found that out. And then, of course, if you guys already know, Venom is stronger. He's faster than Spider-Man. His webs are even stronger than Spider-Man's. So even when he webs Spider-Man, it takes a lot of work for Spider-Man to come up with the strength to even bust out of Venom's webs. That's how strong Venom's webs are. Which is, again, those are a lot of things that shows you that he is the anti-Spider-Man. He is above Spider-Man in a sense in a lot of ways, which a lot of villains have some advantages over Spider-Man, where it's tough again, but no one, Venom was literally to a T better than him. He can overpower him, he can overfight him, he can all that, and you really didn't see Spider-Man get pushed around or bullied as much, or even at that level before Venom, and even after, in my opinion. So that to me is why I fell in love with Venom at that point. I thought he was a cool character due to the fact that he was Spider-Man on steroids almost. He was Spider-Man turned to the 10th level. Like, he can do all you can do what Spider-Man can do and more, or at least at a higher level than Spider-Man. So that's what made Venom such a fearsome slash cool slash great Spider-Man characters, because the attachment and the relationship he had to Spider-Man. And then, of course, I mean, guys, come on, the black suit with the big white spider in the middle slash to the back, that is iconic. That is revolutionary. That enhanced the Spider-Man suit, where you get kind of a darker version of the good guy, quote unquote, Spider-Man suit. Now you have something that's a little bit more rebel, more rebellious, more threatening. A black spider, think of like a Black Widow or something, in the general, like, it just sounds very threatening, very menacing, but all those things with Spider-Man's abilities, him being anti-Spider-Man, him feeling opposite of Spider-Man as far as handling situations and being a little bit more aggressive, made Venom so cool. That's what made Venom cool. That's what made him likable. That's what made him stick out in my memory, as far as my childhood growing up. And be honest with you guys, I love Spider-Man, but Venom became my favorite character within the Spider-Man universe once he was put on the scene. He became my all-time favorite. I love Venom to the core, like, even more than Spider-Man, and I say a lot because, again, Spider-Man was one of my favorite heroes, period, as far as any type of media or comic, whatever the case may be. But once Venom came on the scene, due to the fact that he took what Spider-Man had and kind of made it better, is why I fell in love with the character. And then, of course, the personality, man. He is very, he was cool, man. The way they presented him, how they wrote the character, how he taunted Spider-Man, and usually Spider-Man's the taunter, but he can now do this because he's above what Spider-Man can do. So getting into this film with Venom, of course, his solo film that they decided to release. One thing I do want to compliment about the film is that they chose a great actor to do it. The perfect actor to play Eddie Brock, in my opinion. I feel like Tom Hardy was a great choice. So I don't have, per se, a problem with the film itself. The movie itself, I don't have a problem with. They got a lot of things right as far as character wise, and they stuck to kind of the core character within the comics as far as Venom, not really Eddie Brock itself, but Venom. They kind of gave that comic book personality to Venom. So that was cool. There was nothing wrong with that. Again, the film itself, the idea of the film isn't the problem here. The problem is that the film, they decided to do a solo film with Venom without Spider-Man having any involvement whatsoever. That is not a good mix of a film. That is not the formula that you want to go with when you're creating a Venom film. Now, keep in mind, Venom, in a sense, you wouldn't have a Venom without a Spider-Man. Spider-Man is what brought Venom to be the character it ended up being. As far as the abilities and just the way it presented itself, and the impact of the way it thought and the way it acted had a lot to do with his hate for Peter Parker, his hate for Spider-Man. So if they really wanted to do justice to the character, they would have found a way to do a Spider-Man film with Venom having some type of involvement, and then after that film, go ahead and do a spin-off, a solo film of Venom. Big key thing is appearance and character itself. Imagine if they took Venom from the comic books, from cartoons, whatever you may think of, erased the Black Spider, didn't give him any web shooting ability. He just used a symbiote to kind of web swing per se, or swing through buildings, things like that. His symbiote is pretty much how he does it, not the web itself. And they decided to bring that character out solo in the comics without no attachments to Spider-Man. Imagine how weird, bizarre that character would be as a standalone character with no attachment to Spider-Man in the previous issues or media. That gives you perspective of what I'm speaking of and why it doesn't make sense for them to do a solo film, number one, without presenting him in the previous Spider-Man film, or vice versa. They could have found a way where they did a Venom film that had Spider-Man featuring in it, and then kind of led to it being a standalone film. There had to be some type of history with Spider-Man and Venom for Venom to really fulfill its fullest potential as a character. Now, this works if you like Venom as a standalone character and not his relationship to Spider-Man. In other words, of course, Spider-Man is a key reason for Venom to be and exist the way he does. But let's just say you fell in love with the character even without Spider-Man's abilities, things like that. You just kind of like the personality and just kind of what they wrote and did for that character itself. Now, that certainly means this movie is for you. This movie will work for you because it's something that's focused on Venom without Spider-Man. If Spider-Man never existed, this is what Venom is, and that's what you get from this film. So if you're into just Venom as a standalone character, nothing to do with his abilities as far as Spider-Man, then of course, or even his appearance, you know what I'm saying? His appearance was very reminiscent of Spider-Man, other than being bigger and more muscular, things like that. So if you're into just Venom as a character on his own, not his abilities as far as relating to Spider-Man, just his hate for Spider-Man and Peter Parker, all those things that kind of made the character who he is and helped you understand the type of character he was and what was going to be with him, then of course this movie works great for you, and there's no need to boycott it or even feel like anything's wrong with it. Because again, if you erase those factors I just mentioned, this film is great. Like, this really is a Venom film without those factors, of course. I would call it more so a standalone Venom film, a film if Spider-Man never existed but Venom did. This is that film. Maybe you just fell in love with Venom as an individual character, but I fell in love with Venom because of him being, in a sense, an anti-Spider-Man. I think that's what made him such a cool character to me. That's what kind of drew me in. Even the costume, looking very similar to Spider-Man's costume, drew me in. So those are the factors that made Venom cool as a character to me, which this film doesn't have any of that, and nor did the writers care for any of that. And that to me shows that they're just trying to make money off the name of Venom versus actually a fan of the actual Spider-Man universe involving Venom. Not necessarily just Venom on his own, but Venom with Spider-Man and then on his own would have been the proper steps for me to go ahead and support a film with just Venom alone. He was like the first villain I seen, stronger, faster, and I could just be ahead of Spider-Man in every sense of the word. Imagine if like a loud compressed sound waves weren't a weakness. He would demolish Spider-Man. He would be better than Spider-Man. That's what makes Venom arguably the greatest villain in the Spider-Man universe. All right, beautiful people. Don't forget to like and leave a comment. Let me know if you feel the same or if you don't. Have a blessed day, guys, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the latest in reviews, news, and updates. I'm Mr. Review, here to help you save, never lose. Toodles.